My name is Pauline Blanchette, and I've created this podcast, Speak Up, to help remove the stigma of mental health and to get young people speaking about mental health.
Please be advised, this podcast contains potentially upsetting discussions about mental health and suicide. If you're a young person seeking mental health support, please see our end of episode guidance, contact your GP for support, or call the Papyrus helpline for immediate help on 0800 068 4141. Thanks.
The reason I want to do this podcast is because I want to investigate mental health and young people and why no one is doing anything about it, why our services cut short, and what are ways that young people can cope today. I will start this podcast, first of all, investigating my own personal life and how mental health has affected not only myself, but the people around me, most notably my friends. And this has been one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is because two of my friends, when I was 15, committed suicide. And this was a massive shock, not just to me, but to all the people around me, my school friends, my family, their family, everyone. So this first episode will be trying to go back and investigating who the people were at that time and how they're coping now, and why suicide is so common.
Suicide is the leading cause of death among young people aged 5 to 24 in the UK. The rate of youth suicide has risen by 67% in England and Wales since 2010, and the rate amongst 10 to 19-year-olds has doubled in London over the past 3 years.
When I was younger, I never understood what eating disorders were. It's not something that we got taught in school. It's not something that there was any particular website I would know where to go to understand what it was. And it's only now at the age of 21 that I've realised more and more what it is. And it's still confusing, and it's still not very clear, and there's still no one teaching us about it. But it's something which is a huge epidemic in the UK. Children as young as 6 are having eating disorders. Anorexia can take as long as 8 years to cure. Bulimia can take as much as 5 years to cure. More than 1 million people in the UK have an eating disorder. 11% of those are men. Anorexia has the highest mortality rate for any psychiatric disorder. Therefore, I want to use this episode to investigate. It is something that's going on today, and we all know someone who has difficulty with food and has a difficult relationship with food. So I'll be talking to some of my closest friends as well as some other women and professionals to talk about what's really going on with eating disorders and who's suffering. I was lucky enough to interview Eleanor, a great friend from university, who has always been extremely open with her mental health. She's been extremely open about her anorexia and her having this illness. And I've been really lucky to be able to share her story with me about how she's recovering now. When I say to you mental health, what does that make you think of? And is that something that's important to you in your life?
Yeah, mental health is such a interesting term, because when I think of mental health, I think, no, it's not mental health, it's mental illness. And I think that's often what people mean when they say mental health. It's focusing on the negative aspects of it. Mental health or mental illness has been a big part of my life for a really long time. I got admitted to the Priory on my 17th birthday. I'm 21 now. And I went to the Priory because I got very ill over the summer holidays after my GCSEs with anorexia. It happened very quickly. And I think I'm in a kind of shell shock from it even now. Yeah, I became very ill very quickly. I think the mental side had been there for a long time, kind of brewing negative feelings, feeling very low. I got very, very obsessed with my GCSE work. I got and I think that was what initially made me go into myself, because I was a very social person. I am a very social person. I really need people around me. find it difficult to have like a day where I don't see anyone or talk to anyone, which is something I have to come to terms with because you do have to have that. But I got very obsessed with my work, and it was my maths GCSE which really messed me up because I couldn't do maths well, and so I just decided I was going to do it. And I'd had a similar kind of decision on my 16th birthday that I'm going to get fit, so I'm going to start running. And over the course of the year, it was like I had this control, and then the control started to grip very, very tightly and start to control me. And I remember it just felt like kind of iron bars coming down when a rule would become set in place in my head. And it would be very hard to shift those. So it might be a rule of like, I wouldn't even notice them happening, but then I'd realise when I would try to deviate from the pattern that I was in, that it was actually very hard to, like the amount of food I was eating or the amount of work I was doing. And I did all my GCSEs and left for the summer, and kind of didn't really notice the fact that my mum, looking back on it, said, like, you wouldn't talk to anyone, you wouldn't say a word to me all day, because I was living in a cage of my own head, really, where the rules kind of... It's interesting when people say, like, the voice of the illness or something, because it's not like a voice, it's like more like a presence. It's just, and I think it is based for me on these rules that kind of get put into place, and you're not even aware of when they first came, but they're there. And it might be about, as my eating disorder progressed, it became about calories and numbers, which was interesting. It moved from the maths to the numbers, and I was very good at retaining numbers. It was interesting. And I think numbers are interesting, and we do really live by them in our society, because they're kind of abstract entities and they seem very fixed, and I think it's very difficult to have any sense of control. But if you have goal numbers in your head, whether that's anything, it doesn't have to be about your weight or the food you eat, but if you have a number, that's kind of safety. It's like a solid. If you're feeling isolated. But anyway, I got really ill. I lost a lot of weight very quickly. Got to August, got my GCSE results. I got pretty much all A stars, and I just remember feeling completely numb. I just felt numb all the time. Got iller and iller. Went into hospital because I was running so much. I almost gave myself a heart attack. And was in general hospital because they'd systematically shut down all the mental health units in the part of the country I was living in. And I was there for about a week. They said, "Are you going to eat your food now? Here's a meal plan." And I said, yes. Of course I'm going to eat my food. And went home, got even worse. Tried to go to college, it didn't work. And then got basically taken away from my family because I was too ill and I was too dangerous, and put in a general hospital, and they basically said, "You're going to wait here until we find you a bed, and it can be anywhere in the country." So I was living in the southwest at the time, and they were like, could be in the southeast, could be, I almost went to Staffordshire. Wow. But the beds were, and you just wait, you're with staff who are trying their best but they're very overworked, and if there's someone with a physical ailment, and then there's someone who, I was physically ill, but someone with a broken leg is going to eat to heal. But the nurses didn't have time for me, basically. They had too much going on, and they just got very frustrated. A lot of people got very frustrated because they were like, "Why are you not eating your food?" But I went to the Priory, and that was kind of a huge release for me, because I was able to let go a bit. Other people had taken the control away from me, and it was actually what I needed. And it was like sinking onto a kind of what are those mattresses called? The ones which are foamy.
Um,
And then memory foam.
memory
It was
foam,
like going
yeah,
into
so
memory
yeah.
foam, basically, because I'd been so in this cage and it was like going kind of leaning back.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. As soon as I got there, I was like, I don't have a choice. I have to get better. I have to get out of here. So that was a turning point for me. And I kind of decided to make my own life. I left, when I got out of hospital, I worked full time for a bit and decided to move to Bristol, leave home, got a lot of independence very quickly.
Yeah.
Because I kind of needed it. I'd been in a place where they literally were allowed 2 10-minute walks a day.
Wow.
And I was like, right, I'm going to go live my life, make my life. And now I'm here because I was like, I need to be in London. But it's still with me. And I think it manifests itself in other ways. And once I was very lucky to be young when it happened to me,
Yeah.
because the child mental health services are much better. Basically, when I was 18, they kind of kick you out
Right.
of the system. But having a mental health issue and kind of navigating things like institutions like university, it's kind of knocked me back a lot, because you go to somewhere as kind of apparently warm and open as SOAS, and there's lots of people and they really want the best for you and they really want you to do well and they facilitate you, but ultimately there is no solution to the fact that you're still ill in some way.
Yeah.
And you can be functioning, walking around, you don't look ill, you can have incredibly articulate conversations with people, achieve things, but there is the rigid system of a university, like you have to do these things in this way, and that won't shift because that's what university is. And I've just been feeling so alienated because I feel like a awkward jigsaw piece, really. I feel like I can't slot in, and I've built my life in a way where I can cope, I can get up, I can work, I can have friendships, I can have relationships.
Yeah.
I can feed myself, I can exercise without it getting obsessive, but
Yeah.
I have to do it in a way where like I always have to be mindful of not going into negative habits, and you have to kind of form your brain and kind of handle your own brain with care and not over a long time learn what might push you back.
Yeah.
And so when you go into a place and you realise that actually the way you've configured your life to cope is not going to fit in with that, maybe the deadlines, like I still find it very difficult to focus for long periods of time. I kind of lost my ability to concentrate, which is ironic because I did very well in my GCSEs and badly in my A-levels because my anxiety just got so high. Even now, I'd say worse than the eating disorder is my anxiety.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of have to be like, okay, I'm an awkward jigsaw piece. And I'm going to have to just continue shaping things around me and maybe not do things in the order that you're kind of prescribed. Which I think is the thing I'm only just kind of liberating myself from now. Like, this prescriptive thing we're taught from the moment we start school, really. Like, this is how you achieve success, this is how you will flourish and be a successful person. And I think that's a very difficult thing to come to terms with, because I want to work in some kind of creative industry, I don't know. And so you think, oh, there's like, maybe I don't need to go to university, maybe I can do that, but there is still that prescription of how you are successful in that industry. And I think things like you look on the internet and you have that paradox of Instagram being kind of essential if you want to put yourself out there creatively and network with people, but also you have this impossible standard which is completely artificial, and you completely know it's artificial, but it's very easy to get into this kind of spiral where you look at everyone around you and you think they're achieving things, even if they're not going by the book, they're still
Well, it's just
doing
constant
it.
pressure being a young person.
Yeah.
And I think, like, or anywhere, it's just you feel like this person's doing this person's doing that, and it's just, you feel like you have no time to actually do anything.
No.
And you can't nurture, like, I feel like I find it hard sometimes to nurture my relationships because I feel like I'm being like, no, but I should be doing this, or I should be exercising, or I should be doing that, but I just feel so much pressure all the time. I think from,
Exactly.
from everything, from school, from being able to do that, from having your Instagram perfect. Like, I know it sounds silly, but it's like, it is a way of getting work, and that people do get work from Instagram.
Yeah.
It's like a portfolio almost. It's like,
It is a portfolio, yeah.
So it's,
But it's also curated totally for other eyes.
yeah.
And I feel like that's how we're told to live. We curate yourself for someone else and don't look into yourself, because what other people see is what will define you.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm still trying to work it out. I think taking things almost a day at a time is the only way you can do it, and because otherwise you just kind of, I get this kind of whoosh feeling when I think about all the things I have to do and haven't done and want to do. And just kind of, it's like looking up at the sky and you're like, there is no end to this, and there is no way of getting up into the sky. Like, I have to walk down here.
I spoke to Catalina Bronstein, a leading psychoanalyst who works with women and sexuality, and I wanted to share with her my story and try and investigate a bit more about what's going on with women today and what the pressures are for young women.
Thanks for inviting me to participate in this dialogue. I'm Catalina Bronstein. I'm a psychoanalyst, an adult psychoanalyst, and also a child and adolescent psychoanalyst from the British Psychoanalytical Society, and a child and adolescent psychotherapist. And I work at the Brent Centre and have been working here for more than 30 years. I understand you have a number of questions you want to ask me.
Yes, I do. I'm really interested in, well, the reason I'm doing this podcast is because two of my friends, the reason I came to the Brent Centre in the first place, because two of my friends committed suicide, and they both had severe eating disorders during the time that they were really unwell. And I guess a lot of this is trying to find answers for my 15-year-old self, but as well as trying to really find out what mental health is all about, because I think a lot of people don't really understand. And I think when we were younger, we were just quite shocked by the whole concept of it, and people don't really understand. So I think it was interesting to have professional people explaining, answering some of the questions that young people might have. So I guess in your work, do you feel like there is eating disorders are always with women, for example, or is it something that you see in both genders, and why is it more in women?
Well, I think you are bringing up a very important issue. So the first question you're asking me is, do I think that eating disorders belong just to women or part of it? Well, no. There are many, many young men who suffer from eating disorders, but it is more prevalent in girls, in women. Now, I thought you made an interesting link between eating disorders and suicide, and you are concerned, have the eating disorders, what impact they had on your friends committing suicide. Now, this question points out to something which is perhaps goes beyond just the eating disorder, which is how bad your friends must have been felt about themselves, about not just their weight, but about who they are, who they were, about the way they looked in general, about the sense that perhaps they felt condemned or even criticized and ridiculed, whether in reality or in fantasy, because a lot of these things happen in people's minds, And it might or might not go along with the fact that perhaps they were overweight or they were not overweight. Because this has to do far more with the image we have of ourselves and all the different elements that have an impact on, how we feel about the way we look. Now, a big factor in all of this has to do with the sense that we might not, or somebody might not like themselves, herself. And it has to do with this sense of harshness that goes together with that, because I would say most of us don't like some aspects of ourselves. But to take it to the degree of having to hate oneself up to the point of feeling in such despair that one has to take one's own life, that needs a number of elements or things to come together. And some of these things have to do with the image that the way these girls maybe looked did not match their sense of how they should look. Now, I think there is a pressure nowadays to look more in one way than in others. Maybe more pressure, greater pressure than before, and that has certainly an impact. And we can think about where that pressure comes from, how much it comes from peer groups, how much it comes from the media, how much is, increased by seeing films and by publicity. But we also have to think about how we all react to this. So it is always a combination of external factors and internal factors. And a central point about those internal factors has to do with the sense that very quickly anybody, but particularly in adolescence and after puberty, adolescents feel at the mercy, one could say, of being criticized and feeling really bad, being made to feel really bad about the way they look.
The period of being 15, 16, 17 was extremely hard. I think it was if you're already feeling bad about yourself, plus in that sort of age range, I think it's just really bad. And I guess when we talk about young people, obviously children as well, and do you think there's more and more girls who are like 6 years old who develop eating disorders? Is it starting to be something which is younger and younger, or has it always been like a wide age range?
I think there is now, there are more children suffering from eating disorders. I do, and maybe in this we can think of the impact of the media as well, and role models and how they look. But one could say that in general, it is there are the changes that come together with puberty that bring a major upheaval. It is an upheaval in everybody's life, and depending how the adolescent felt as a child as well, they will be more or less able to cope with the changes that come with puberty.
Okay.
Because the changes have to do with changes at many different levels. There are changes in the body, changes in relationship to the family, changes in relationship to peers and to oneself. And a lot of things that have to be given up from childhood. It's like being in a new role. And with the enormous pressure that comes also from hormonal changes. So all of that is far more difficult to control after puberty than
when you're a child. No, I can understand that. And do you think, is there a reason do you think that it's more women that have eating disorders than men? Or do you think it's just because of the pressure that you were talking about, and that's something maybe just the pressure that's on women and not on men? Or
Yes, I think there is also pressure on men. I think, though, that women have perhaps a more complex relationship to their bodies as well. And I take your point, there is a lot to do with media. But one of the things that I think nowadays is that girls in particular perhaps feel under a lot of pressure to be like, look grown up and be grown up and be sexual before they feel ready to.
Yes.
And that comes from a number of sources. It comes from social pressure, from their own friends, from peers. And the other thing is also that they feel that if they don't prove they are grown up, they will be teased, they could be teased or even bullied.
Yeah.
And with the pressure of social media, this can very quickly be spread, say, throughout the school. So what was at some point to be teased or mocked by 2 or 3 people, now it could be the whole school laughing at somebody looking a bit plump. Because there is a picture that has been, widely shown around. Now, all this pressure, I think, has intensified probably in the last years.
Yeah.
But women's conflict with their own bodies has a very long history. It's not new.
Yeah.
Next time, I will be speaking about men and anxiety and masculinity, and about how some of my male friends have been coping with their mental health issues, and how sometimes that's turned to alcohol and addiction.